what did you learn from those early years of failure?
Sure. Yeah, I can recall some very specific times of failure. You know, you mentioned, well, we were selling mailboxes and street lights. As you know, I saw this opportunity in Florida. There was 2005. People are building everywhere, subdivisions going everywhere. Every doctor and lawyer in town thought they were a developer because it was such a big boom. And so they were buying parcels and subdividing them. And I was like basically knocking on their door saying, "Hey, like you got this parcel, you're building this development. Can I do your street signs and your street lights and your mailboxes that all match? It'd be beautiful." And they're like, "Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That would be great." So, okay. So it was a lot of easy sales. But when that came to a screeching halt in 2007, after the financial crisis, we moved our stuff online and that worked out. But there was a moment there where like it was a failure. I had taken all of my savings, as well as, partnered up and, had, borrowed money and, did a lot of things that were a lot of work, put hundreds of hours in. We're working, I worked in my office till, 1, 2 in the morning regularly during that season, trying to make this business work. And to have it completely evaporate was really, really difficult to go through. At the same time, I can't ever recall a time of like curling up in a ball and crying. I can recall times of, you know, telling my wife at the time, it's like, well, well, like we can only go up from here. Just consider all the learnings we just got. Like, all right, we just, dramatically, failed. And we've really learned something. And, we've, had our first, first office, first a lot of things,
Yeah.
and we skill stacked to some extent, wasn't so aware of the concept then, but we were doing that. We were learning to go knock on doors. We're learning to get on the phone and do sales calls. We're learning to manage our own books through through software solutions, and all of those skills played into it. So I'd say the learnings, there was certainly, shame, maybe, probably more embarrassment than shame, more fear. I say of all the emotions that have driven me over the years, fear of
Yeah.
failure, incredibly high,
Yeah.
right? And especially you take risk and it's like, you're at risk. When you're working till 2 in the morning, it's not for fun. It's out of drive, and drive comes from, fear and excitement. But these things can be two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can remember some early on, especially in that same time period, 2008, going into the Great Recession, things rocking and rolling and feeling pretty good. And then it seemed like overnight everything changed. So fear was definitely a high motivator. I've talked about in some previous videos where insecurity, being dyslexic, hence the whole channel is talking about that. But that was always a big driver for me. Fear of failure, and then sprinkled with some insecurity on top of that. So, what did it look like going? So you have this business, it's collapsing because of the market or for whatever reason. Take me through some of your thought process in getting into the e-commerce. What did that look like? And specifically, what were some of the traits and the principles that you use today that you kind of carried through? And what were some of the things you thought were important that turned out to not really be that important, if you remember any of those?
Yeah, I have to think on that last one. I'd say from a trade standpoint, you know, going through that season where the business was, evaporating, collapsing, basically every job we had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of projects, really, millions in the pipeline, and these projects evaporated. And so out of that, the big thing was like, okay, well, we had to have another idea, and then I needed something to have hope for.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's the one emotion that, comes to mind. And maybe that's, maybe that's a muscle that's learned. Maybe that's a, trait, but the ability to, have a vision, but then to have hope for that vision and to believe it in a way that you can like motivate yourself, right? Like that's the key ingredient for me. It's like, you have to believe in what you're doing. And if you can believe it to the extent that you can bring it to reality, well, that's like you can move mountains,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I know there's a misconception. You've had this happen. I've had people come to me and be like, In my business, in the trades business, people can kind of see the work, and they see you climbing up ladders, and they see you, building the houses and doing whatever. With an e-commerce business, sometimes there's an illusion that you just buy an email address or buy a domain, and you throw some merchandise up there, and boom, it's like a magic mushroom that pops up overnight. Just it's this beautiful business. Talk a little bit about the how much energy it takes to build something significant, because my son, who you know very well, 19, it's something that I'm constantly talking to him about, is like, hey, get the reps in, just be close to where the action's happening. Talk, hang around me, hang around your uncle Lucas, hang around these other men, women who are in business, and just see what it takes to be successful. Talk a little bit about, because I remember, the way I remember it is you spending literally weeks sometimes where you didn't come out of your condo on the beach, and you were just constantly, figuring things out and grinding. So talk a little bit about
Right.
the effort that went into that.
Sure. Right. Yeah. What you're referring to is like when we started the e-commerce store. I didn't know anything about an e-commerce store. I say that I had sold a bunch of stuff on eBay in college just as a side hustle. We'd go buy out your whole yard sales and then throw them on eBay, which was a fun little side thing. But so taking that, say, okay, well, can I sell these products that I were selling developers, these mailboxes and street lights and street signs? Can I sell them online? And I remember like Googling how do I build a web store, and I remember like going to the bookstore and buying a book and looking at it, and I tried building my own site for like a few days, and it was just like, okay, it's like even if I improve, my baseline is so terrible, I don't think this is going to work. And so I ended up hiring. I came across Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week around 2007, 8, and said, okay, like, because it spoke to me, because like, okay, I could probably afford to hire an offshore person. About the same time, I think I read Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat, and just realizing that, okay, I should be looking at offshore labor, because that's what I need. I don't have any, I've spent all my money here until next summer, until I make some more money through snow cones. I didn't have any more money. So I was like, all right. So I've worked with an offshore person. We built a website. We built it on a basic platform. At the time, it was Yahoo Stores. But to your point, I spent many weeks, and there was one point in time I think I had gone weeks at a time, and we lived on the fourth or fifth floor of a condo on the beach, so that wasn't so terrible. I could see the water, but I just sat on my porch and worked, or I sat at my table and worked, and literally, and my wife did as well. We both worked. She did customer service. I handled the marketing, and we just worked around the clock. And that was in 2008. The whole second half of 2008, we just worked around the clock. And we had no employees, and it may sound fancy. We were living on the beach. There was a surplus of condos at the beach. They were super cheap, and so we did that. And yeah, it was many weeks. It was grinding. And so the idea of putting in 70, 80, 90, even 100-hour work weeks happened. And I mean, you know me well enough, now like that still happens sometimes.
Yeah.